Dun-na-na, dun-na-na. Guess who's back? It's your boy Phantom Rebel, aka Mr. Cox for those that don't know me. And we're back with another one. It's been a minute, y'all, and we do apologize for the long lapse since our last podcast episode, Cheating on the Square. But you know, a lot of shit's been going on with us personally, and we just needed that time and space to get back on track. You know, to bring you guys more great content, which is what we strive to do every time. We have the privilege of you guys' listening ears. So we just want to let you guys know we do appreciate you and thank you for listening. But you know, I love having the freedom to share my thoughts and my outlook openly without the fear of retribution. You know, and that's a concept that I think that we take advantage of. But you know, if we were to think about what if we didn't have that freedom, and we were forced to comply with rules and regulations that prevented those freedoms. I mean, would you be upset? I'd be upset, maybe afraid, you know? Such things can be grim concepts to consider. But in this episode, we'll explore those fears and ultimately try to find a solution or solutions, examples of where to place our anger in those times of need.
Yes, thank you, Guerrero. Hey y'all, it's your girl Tasha here, and again, I am so excited just to kind of piggyback off of what Craig said, to be back, to share our thoughts with you. It has been a minute, some things has gone down, but we are here today in our virtual living room.
Back in the virtual living room, honey.
Yes, sharing our thoughts and also our experiences with you guys.
Yeah.
First, we'd like to again thank you guys for listening. This show would not exist without you. So we appreciate all of the people here in the U.S. that are listening. We appreciate the people in Germany.
Thank you.
We appreciate the people in Australia and all over who happen to click on this podcast and to hear what we got to talk about.
Definitely.
So again, we appreciate your feedback, your support, and your love. Secondly, just a quick reminder that we are not experts by any means. We are, again, just two lovebirds going down the proverbial rabbit hole together.
Yeah.
Tonight, we're taking some of our practical knowledge to try and assist others in times of crisis and in times of need. So here is your trigger warning right now. Additionally, here's how you can continue to support us. We have committed to 10 episodes, and after this show, we'll only have 5 left. So we're almost there.
We need that help, y'all.
Yeah, halfway there. So cheer us on.
Yeah.
To support the Untold Experience podcast, please just like and share on all the platforms that you're listening to. We are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on iHeartRadio. So shout out to all of those platforms for giving us a voice. And if you're listening, please, if you're listening to our banter, give us 5 stars. That'll help our show reach its highest level. Lastly, you can also submit your testimonies, your victories, and any show topics that you'd like for us to tackle via our email, which is theuntoldexperience@gmail.com. So, without further ado, sit back, grab your wine, your tea, your beer, apple cider.
Apple cider.
Guerrero is drinking apple cider, or whatever sustenance you choose, and let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Well, let's talk about it, honey, because that's what we like to do, right?
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yes.
So again, thank you guys. You know, this topic of anger, you know, and where should we place it? Like I said, in a time of need. So we just wanted to kind of dive into it a little bit, and just kind of, like Natasha said, kind of talk about it here. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was misplaced anger. Misplaced anger, you know, is something that as old as time, even goes all the way back to even the devil himself, right? The arrogance that these are new afflictions specific to this new age would be unwise, you know. But let's look at the word anger for a minute here in its truest form. in its truest form, it is a natural and instinctive response to threats. Right? When you feel afraid, when you feel like, you needed to present yourself as, tough, or, you wanted to stand up to a bully, right? Like those things, there are definitely times where anger can assist you and kind of, be used in a positive sense in a way. And some would even argue that anger is a necessary response, like I said, to survive a tough situation. However, in a 2010 study that I found, it says that uncontrolled anger is that uncontrolled anger is detrimental to our physical and mental well-being, right? So in the devil's case, it caused him a major error in his judgment. Yeah. Yet we all know that the man in the red suit isn't the only one privy to these emotions. We're all subjective to become angry for a number of different things. So you have to be mindful of those triggers because they are numerous. And our emotional responses may vary, depending on where you grew up, what kind of parents you had, did they drink, did they party, did they do drugs, did they do it in front of you, did they touch you inappropriately? Hell, it could be something as simple as growing up as a Jehovah's Witness in a Christian-dominated culture, right? And that makes me think about a friend that I grew up with, not necessarily grew up with, but I went to high school with him. His name was Ermis. And shout out to Ermis, just in case you're out there. And I hope you're doing well. Hope everything's good for you. But, in high school, I can recall times that he used to express how unfair it was that he didn't get presents on Christmas because of his religious practice. Not to dog anyone's religious or religion, but just from a human standpoint, that would be upsetting. And sometimes it's easier to take those things out on ourselves or other people. Yeah. So I think it's important to again, to just be aware of those triggers, because it can start from something from your childhood. It could be something, some embarrassing encounter that you had. So it's always important, I think, to kind of recognize the source of that anger. At least when you come across those particular instances, you can at least draw from those experiences to maybe help you move forward a little bit. It doesn't always necessarily keep you from getting angry, right? Because we are human and we are subjective to get angry, from time to time. But I think, just being mindful of just a few practices can maybe help curb your enthusiasm a little bit, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I think that many people have had similar experiences to your friend in high school. I could definitely recall a story of my childhood where I wasn't able to go trick-or-treating on Halloween. We just talked about that during the Thanksgiving holiday with my mom. Halloween happens to be one of my favorite, if not the favorite, holiday of our, culture. But growing up, we were like the only kids in our friend group who did not have an opportunity to get dressed up and to go door to door and to receive the candies because it was deemed as evil. Just simple as that, has impacted me and affected me to this day. Now I make sure that on Halloween, I make sure that it's a very special thing for me. I don't know, my kids are older now, so we don't go all out, but I make sure to at least absorb it because, I was so angry about not being able to as a kid. And also, not just Lucifer, he wasn't, the only angel that got angry. I remember reading here recently that there was an angel named Azazel who got angry because God created man and God wanted Azazel to bow to Adam. And he got angry with God. And so Azazel was cast out because he really hated the fact that man was created and that he had to bow down. So,
wow.
Human beings are just not, we're not special.
Not
we're not special. Even God actually got angry. Jesus got angry, but the thing is that he did not sin. So we'll talk about that in today's times, as far as where to place that anger, right? That's what we're talking about today. There are two types of adverse emotions. That's what we're going to focus on, because emotions are not just bad. Of course, we have good emotions like happiness, joy, elation, all of those things. But today we're going to talk about the adverse emotions. So they are primary and secondary. Now, according to the dictionary, adverse primary emotions are the first stimuli we feel after a negative stimuli. And after a negative stimulus. It's the first thing that we feel, right? And examples of primary emotions are sadness, it's fear, it's disappointment, it's that feeling of being let down, all of those things, etc., etc. Now, secondary emotions are what we feel after the primary emotions, and the secondary emotion is there to protect ourselves. Right? It's there to protect ourselves. And examples of secondary emotions are anger. So those of you out there, I'm sure you guys all know this stuff, right? Secondary emotion is the anger. So if something happens that made you sad, and instead of presenting or being vulnerable, right, and showing that sadness, the default then is to become angry, right? So that is a secondary emotion. Stress is also a secondary emotion. You're feeling overwhelmed, which would be the primary emotion. You're feeling like things are just going out of control. So then the secondary emotion to that primary would be stress. And also frustration would be a secondary emotion. Anxiety, rage. Ooh, that rage, boy, is pretty powerful. Now, we are here to try to unpack, these adverse secondary emotions, and to kind of talk about its effects, right? Now, as Craig mentioned earlier, secondary emotions are feelings that we experience after a primary to protect ourselves, and it usually have a secondary impact, right? And a lot of stimuli or primary emotions can be triggered by anger, including but not limiting to, like, people crossing our boundaries, people failing to meet our expectations, stressful circumstance, family issues, trauma, as Craig mentioned earlier, triggers, and all of those things can attribute to poor mental health and addiction, just to name a few. Now, let me tell you something about this secondary emotion.
Tell us, honey.
Woo! This secondary emotion is way more intense than the primary emotion. Notice that when you become angry, you are more angry than you are sad. Notice that when you become frustrated, you are way more frustrated than you are overwhelmed. You're way more stressed. You have way more anxiety.
That's a good point.
Than your primary emotions. And I wondered why that was. So I did a little bit of research, and why is our secondary emotions way more intense? It's because they're used as weapons. Right? If you're going to use a weapon, it needs to be pretty powerful, right? It needs to be pretty strong. Not only are they used as weapons, but they're used as force fields. The proverbial force field. Yes. So those weapons and those force fields are used to push people away. It's almost like a response that an animal might have. Let's say, or like a warning sign that an animal might have. Let's take a snake. Normally before a strike, you can hear it hiss. Even maybe a dog, normally before the dog bites, it begins to growl.
Right.
So it's like that response that we have to that stimuli to protect ourselves from being hurt further than we was before. So of course, that secondary emotion needs to be more intense in order for it to work as a weapon. It needs to be more intense in order to put those boundaries up. Because if a person crossed your boundary, before, that primary emotion was still there. So you have to do something more intense in order to make the stimuli stop happening, to revert the stimuli. These responses, though, that's one thing that we need to recognize, is that because they are stronger, because they are more powerful, they tend to be destructive. Let that sink in. Our secondary emotions, because they seem to be more powerful and they are more intense, they are also more destructive. And they're damaging. And these secondary emotions can cost us relationships. It can cost us our liberties.
Yeah, honey.
Right?
Yeah.
It could also cost us our freedom in some instances. So
even
that's
our lives in some cases. Not to cut you off.
No.
That's
please.
That's I think that's an important thing to kind of pause on and kind of fan out a little bit. Of course we have an agenda that we're going through, but I think it's also important to stop and reflect on things that we think are important. And I think that secondary response is huge, right? Because, again, as human beings, we're going to be afraid. We're going to be confused. We're going to be nervous. We're going to feel inadequate in certain situations.
And those are all primary emotions.
So first recognizing that, I think is key to being privy to your triggers. Like you have to be mindful of your triggers, right? Not as a weakness. It's not a weakness that you may get angry because someone is chewing their cereal out, right? Like that may be something you feel is a silly thing to get upset about. But it's not, though, right? Because if it's actually making you upset, it doesn't matter if it's silly to someone else or not.
Right.
But it's important to realize why does that make you angry, right? Does that connect you back to someone who abused you, who chewed cereal out, right? Like, so you have to make those connections in order to stay in front, of your own triggers. And I think it helps me, right? Because I know that I'm not good in certain areas, that I'm strong in this area, but I'm weak at this, right? So I have to be mindful of that weakness. So when I become afraid, when I become confused, or when I become inadequate, I can know the source of that, right? So I can direct myself a little better rather than act out in anger, act out in that secondary way of responding. Yeah.
And again, just for me, and just a little bit of self-disclosure here, and how these secondary emotions or secondary responses can be damaging. Like when something has triggered me, like I get really, really upset. I go through a physical thing. Like I start to feel this burning desire in my chest. I start to yell. I start to say things that I may not initially mean, just out of that anger. And basically that's, why those things are so damaging. And that's why it's important for us to know where to place our anger. Because if not, we can definitely end up doing some things or even saying some things that we definitely do not mean.
Right. Yeah. And, that's, as you mentioned, even saying things that we don't mean can often put us in some very peculiar situations. And I apologize, guys, if you hear noise in our background.
Yeah, we're trying to make sure, ignore this. It's there, guys.
It's there,
So I'm sorry. It's there.
Again,
we got noise. Okay?
For those of you guys who have been with us these last 5 episodes, we're in the RV. And if anyone has been in an RV, you know that sounds can come from anything. So we do apologize for the access noise.
Yep, and we promise to give you real, uncut, unfiltered
raw content, baby. That's what we do.
Raw material. So
coming
sorry.
as is, dishes clashing.
Yep, sorry.
Everything. So we're just gonna keep it in and roll with us. So if y'all can roll with us, then on this journey, we appreciate you guys even more.
Yep.
But yeah, so how do we live with anger? Again, that being that none of us are perfect angels, it is important that we continue to find ways and practices to help us cope while we progress, right? Like, I think that that's important too, because we're never going to be a finished product. In my mind, I'm never going to be a finished product, right? And that's okay, because I think that that helps me strive to be better constantly, right? It's a constant effort. It's never a satisfied. It should never be. You're satisfied with where you are, because we can always be better. Because we have to remember to give ourselves grace, right?
That's it.
That's so important, because it's easy to beat ourselves up, right? And then we begin to expect other people to behave a certain way or to do certain things based on how we, how kind we are even to ourselves. Like I said, personally, I can be guilty of being overly hard on myself, like I said, which makes me more inclined to get angry, ironically, as I subconsciously alienate myself due to my own self-righteous nature, right? It's kind of weird how that works. So often we determine how we will react or respond based on pre-observed knowledge, when really all we need to do is remain in the mindset of forgiveness, thus forming a layer of resilience that can be built upon, helping us heal from our former traumas, substance or physical abuses, or just dealing with life's many curveballs that ultimately become triggers for our anger, right? I mean, there's a million reasons why someone decides to hit their wife or to beat their kids, right? And it's never often because of the act in which they initially responded to, right?
Right.
Your kid may get a bad grade, right? And that may constitute, in your mind, a reason to whoop their butt. When in all reality, that's something that you haven't dealt with within yourself, that you're now taking out on your child, right?
Or your wife, or your partner,
right,
may say something that they don't, that they don't necessarily like, and they're triggered, and they end up striking the other partner. Not saying that we're not condoning any of this. By the way, we're just saying that that's why it's important to recognize, first of all, that primary emotion, right? What is actually why that trigger is there, and also knowing where to place that anger. I'm sorry, Getty, I just wanted to.
No, that was good. No, this is a unified effort here. So, and that's pretty much where I was going with that. So hopefully you guys found that to be helpful, because I found in my own research, there's certainly some self-reflection that goes into that, and I hope that this particular episode was it stood out to me, because I think that we all suffer from this, and then we can all take a step back to reflect and just to try to be better, right?
Yeah.
As best we can.
Yep. And I think that the self-evaluation is very, very important, because most times we get angry at someone else when it's actually a mirror that we're getting mad at. Whatever behavior or traumatic experience that happened to us, or, what makes us angry, is stuff that we have to deal with on the inside. So let me just say, like, if Craig was to do something that I didn't like or whatever, I then become angry. So a lot of that is entitlement. A lot of that is expectations that I might have on Craig that I'm putting on him. A lot of that is, projection. I'm projecting out something that I would like to see, or even something that I'm lacking. You know what I mean? In order to invoke a certain response. Right. So because he is just demonstrating something that may trigger me, or demonstrating something that that may seem like a lack or doesn't meet the expectation, that really has nothing to do with him. Right?
Right. Well, I can remember, and that's a great point, honey, because I remember a story that my mom shared with me. My mom, who's also a counselor, she was speaking on how, the things that she needs. Say, for instance, a hug, right? My mom needs hugs, right? So rather than get mad that her husband didn't hug her when she comes in from work, she now asks him, honey, can I have a hug? Right? Because that's her need. It's not his need.
Right.
So rather than get angry, start, slamming stuff and kind of
having an attitude.
Right? And then, which obviously your mate responds to, and then a situation has now resolved. And
right. You're thinking about getting divorced now, all because
you didn't want to ask for a hug. So it's important to be able to ask for the things that you need,
right?
And not just expect your partner or your mate, your whatever you want to call it, to know automatically, and to keep in mind, even if they do know, right? Like there's some things that I know that you need that I may forget, that I may not be thinking about, right? So that's not an opportunity for you to say, okay, look, now you don't love me because you didn't remember this little particular thing, right? So all these little ways that we decide on our own to get mad about, it could be alleviated by simple asks, right?
For what it is that you
need.
Talking about and recognizing that this is your expectation. Your partner has a right to adhere or not adhere to your expectations.
Such a great point. That's a great point.
So the fact that I'm getting upset because my expectations aren't met is egotistical, and it's also controlling. Now, there is a way for you to communicate what it is that you need without the expectation.
Right.
And that goes back to what your mom said, was to just simply ask for it. And again, Craig and I are by no means perfect when it comes down to this stuff. Again, we're telling you things that we're actually going through in the moment. Right? We're going currently in the moment, so it's very, very important too. You brought up something else earlier about grace. Grace is not something that a person earns.
Yeah, honey.
Whether it's you're having grace for yourself, whether you're having grace for others. So yourself nor others does not have to do something in order to receive grace.
Yeah.
And also what goes along with grace is a word that I love so much is mercy.
Mercy.
So
it's such an unused word, forgotten word.
Right.
It sounds like very biblical and very ancient, but it's like, I don't think there's a more relevant time for it to be used, right? Like, we need mercy in the world, like by God, everywhere. Like, hell,
even the current state of our globe right now. Yeah. Mercy is definitely needed. And that's one of the things, and we'll talk about like some ways to combat anger here shortly, but that's one of the things that you need to keep in mind, like when you feel that anger burning inside of you. The first thing we should definitely think about is mercy. Because if we're focused on mercy, if we're focused on grace, also if we're focused on gratitude, our primary emotion may never transmutate into a
That's
secondary.
Such a great point, honey.
It may never transmutate into the secondary emotion. So
which is what you want, right?
Right. When something happens and it's a disappointment, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get angry. You can feel that disappointment. You can feel that fear. You can feel that sadness. But it's important to not stay there and waddle in it. Right. So once you feel that emotion, recognize, yes, I'm sad. Yes, I'm disappointed. Yes, I'm scared. Now it's time for that grace to kick in.
Yes.
Now it's time for that mercy to kick in. Now it's time for that gratitude to kick in.
Right.
And if we're able to actively be in a space of gratitude, actively be in a space of mercy and grace. You know, we still may experience a secondary emotion, but our responses won't be so detrimental. Because remember, as we stated before above in the earlier topic, is that a secondary emotion most times have adverse side effects. Once you display this anger, once you display this rage, your consequences is not worth it in the moment. It's not worth it. So lastly, we're almost there, almost to the end of this. Some ways to combat our anger. First, I want to say breathe. Like, I know that is so cliche, right? And if anyone out there knows me, you know I'm not a cliche type person.
No.
So
not at all.
But I'm gonna say breathe. And the reason why we need to breathe is because airflow through our lungs, and slowing down our breathing, all of those things reduce your heart rate, which is something that you feel when you're experiencing a secondary, or before or prior to you're experiencing a secondary emotion. So it reduces our heart rate, and it decreases the cortisol levels, which fuels that fight, flight, or freeze response. So not only does it do that, but it also reduces our blood pressure. So understand something. When you're experiencing these secondary emotions, you have an increase in all of those things. So your heart rate speeds up. So it's important for you to pay attention to your body. Your body is going to tell you when you're about to pop off.
The body does not lie.
I know from experience. Your body will definitely let you know when you're about to pop off, because your heart rate will increase, your blood pressure will increase, and you'll feel this adrenaline, this fight, flight, or freeze response. So in those moments, it is important to breathe. Just in through your nose, controlled breathing, not huffing and puffing, because I tend to do that too.
That's a different breath.
That's a different
Well, that breath, I think fire is coming out of that breath right there. That's a whole different breath right there. But no, definitely the breathing, honey, because you know, for me, it's uncontrollably shaking when I get nervous, right? Like that's something that affects me when I get angry or when I get nervous. It's kind of the same sort of reaction. Some people, I remember when, you know, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can remember people that you grew up with, right? They would start crying, right? Some people would think, oh, he punking out, but no, that boy's super he powering up.
Yep.
Right? Or she powering up. She about to lose her mind. You better get away from her.
Yes.
Them tears don't mean weakness, right? So it's just people respond differently when they're, you know, emotionally at their amped up peak. So, you know, like I said, for me, it's uncontrollably shaken. So I think breathing would definitely help me, because a lot of times you don't realize, and I think you even mentioned, you stop breathing and you don't realize it, right?
Yep.
You're not even breathing, so oxygen is even going to your brain, right? So common sense tells me you're not even able to think properly because you're not breathing properly, right? Like that's common sense. So that can be controlled, right? That can be controlled. So that's a very powerful thing to remember, because in the moment it's very easy to succumb to all those secondary emotions.
Yep. So breathe. Okay, that's your first thing. Breathe. Then the second thing would be to drink water.
Oh, Jesus.
Seriously, go.
Why are you looking at me? Why are you looking at me? This girl, I swear, she will text message me 3 times a day asking if I drink some water. I'll be like, damn, I ain't drink no water. Let me go pour some.
Right.
But it's a helpful. I mean, it's a great thing to do.
Right.
Because there's so many benefits. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your
please.
Water highlights there, because it's pretty important. From someone who doesn't drink water and that consumes a lot of tortilla chips.
Lots of tortilla chips.
I definitely
buy a bag of tortilla chips every day.
And like, I mean, we're joking, you know, but you know, in all seriousness, I think I shared with her a couple weeks ago. There was a statistic that I think I saw that, and it's, you know, commonly known that women typically live longer than men do. and in the video they showed a man consuming products that weren't good for him. You know, and so, you know, hey, guys, you know, we like to eat chips, right? We like to eat chips. You know, some of us have a sweet tooth. Some of us might like to drink brown liquor, liquor, beer.
Brown liquor, child.
You know, these things, you know, dehydrate you, right? So if you're not replenishing your body with water, you know, not only are you not replenishing, you know, blood cells and you know, allowing blood to flow and all the other, you know, things that we don't realize that water does. You know, it can also affect your emotional responses, which is pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, scientifically, drinking water also reduces cortisol levels. So that's one of the, as a counselor, when I talk to kids, you know, if they come in upset, the first thing that I do is ask them to breathe, and I'll go get them some water. Because I know that.
I always wonder why people give water when,
yes,
you know, like, what the hell is the water going to do?
Yes, the water reduces the cortisol level. Yeah. So it'll that adrenaline. So cortisol level. It relates to adrenaline. Just know that cortisol and adrenaline are different, but cortisol level is the fight, flight, or freeze response, and it'll reduce that response. But when you grab the water, ladies, I'm talking to you. Okay, hear me out. I believe me. Just hear me out.
Listen.
When you drink the water, please don't throw it on nobody. Okay, please. I think that is an assault charge. So
it can't be insane, you know.
Yes. So when you go and grab your glass
especially
of water,
if the cup fly out your hand and hit somebody in the head.
Drink it, but don't throw it on nobody. Okay. While breathing and drinking your water, focus on giving yourself, the person, or the thing that you're angry with grace. Again, there's that word.
Can you say that one more time, honey?
So while you're breathing, while you're drinking your water, give yourself, the person or thing that you're angry with grace. Not only grace, but mercy. Not only mercy and grace, but gratitude.
Because that kind of helps fortify you from moving to the secondary emotion.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Even though you may feel disappointed, even though you may feel sad, you know, if you're able to breathe and if you're able to bring down those levels and to think clearly, as you mentioned that water helps you do, then it'll prevent going into that rage. And giving yourself grace and just focusing on grace and mercy, it'll prevent going into that anger. It helps to reduce anxiety. Now, also just understand, men and women, if you're in a situation where you are being abused, that's a totally different thing. Completely different. Okay, so if you are being
you need
abused,
to get out of that situation.
Please go and grab help. You know, maybe talk to a counselor. Get authorities involved if you're afraid for your life.
Hell, go to the church and
go
talk to
the
the
church. Yeah.
pastor if you don't have any. You know, a lot of people are in situations where they may not have access to the health care that we have. You know, in the Northwest, as I was mentioning to you earlier, we're known for mental health care.
Right.
Here, but if you're in Augusta, Alabama, right, where the mental health care really isn't. You know, I mean, it's known about, but it's not
tangible.
Right, it's not tangible. Go to your pastor. I mean, it's a place to start. I mean, just someone that you trust, someone that you know has your best interest at heart.
Yeah. So these are just techniques for just these common everyday things that we're going through. But again, if there's abuse present, please get assistance and get help quickly. Sure. So the next thing, also, you know, while you're breathing, focusing on giving yourself and the person or thing that you're angry with grace, and you're drinking your water, remove yourself from the situation if need be. Okay, don't continue to stand. I have that bad with my fist down to my side, wanting to prove my point.
Right.
Don't continue to stand there and say things that you do not mean. Don't continue to stand there and go back and forth and allow that secondary emotion to damage something that could, you know, be potentially important to you in your life. Don't allow your secondary emotion to damage great relationships, partnerships, families, things like that. Just walk away. Just be like right in the middle. It don't even matter. You could be going heated. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get me some water to breathe a little bit, and just walk away from the situation until things cool down.
Right. And just remember, even if you don't, right? Even if you lapse, I think that's important, because again, that goes back to the grace thing. Even if you lapse, right, and you do respond, because I mean, it's always easy to put things in practice when you first hear them, right? You hear something inspirational, you hear something inspiring, you immediately begin to take steps towards it.
Right.
But on that second, third week where, maybe you're on to something else now, you're not listening to that audio book that gave you all these useful tips anymore. Maybe you're listening to a fantasy book that isn't talking about positive ways to move yourself forward.
Just remember that it's a process, and it's not an event. Okay?
Definitely a process.
It's not an event. It's not something that you plan and then it happens and now you're all good. No, it's something that is put into practice.
Yeah.
And the reason why we practice is because we're not experts, right? We're not going to get it right on the first try. So it's just something that we need to continue to continue to practice and remember that it's a process, right? Next, identify your primary emotion and its root cause.
I think we mentioned that earlier.
Yep, we mentioned that earlier, because you're angry in the moment, you're walking away, you're breathing, you're grabbing water. While you're doing that, you're giving yourself grace, and mercy, and you're in gratitude. Once you do that, the next thing you should do is try to identify the primary emotion. What is what is the root cause? And when you do that, you'll be able to, that's when you're doing a self-inventory. Right? You're doing a self-inventory. You're evaluating the things that is on the inside. You're now taking that finger that you're pointing outwardly and turning it inwardly.
Man in the mirror.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to identify your primary emotions, because, chances are the secondary emotion can be solved internally if the primary emotion is identified and resolved. Right.
That's huge, right? That can save you money. That can save you thousands of dollars by.
Now forget that. Pay me. I need $25
sure, but just remembering those simple things it can keep you from maybe needing a counselor, right? If you're able to identify those primary things before they get to the secondary things, right? Because the secondary is where we, like you said, that's where we get in the most trouble. That's where we commit crimes. That's where we say things we don't mean. So if you can avoid from getting there, then hell, that's even better.
Yeah. I just want to also mention again that remember, the only person that you can control is yourself. So having these expectations of other people, that's what mainly, especially in relationships, that's what causes it to break down. You cannot control the other person. All you can do is ask for what it is that you need. Now, I do have a note here that says that some form of outside intervention may be required to soothe a primary emotion because they could be caused by traumatic experiences. Some people may not possess the tools to do that self-work, that shadow work, and that's okay. If you're not able to pinpoint what that root cause that is so deeply embedded in your soul that's causing you to lash out, please don't do nothing. Go, Craig said earlier, go find a counselor. If you don't have a counselor that's handling, go talk to a preacher. If you don't want to go talk to a preacher or a spiritualist, then you can find a friend that you trust. Don't grab a friend that's a yes man that's going to tell you everything that you want to hear. You're going to go and find someone that's going to call you on your stuff. Right. So that they can be honest with you.
Yeah, honey.
Yep. And next thing is don't react, but respond. I want to shout out Rev for that. Reverend Renee, thank you for that, because I definitely stole that from her. Like, do not react, but respond. You know, a reaction is something that is done without thought. A reaction is done out of spontaneity. You know, a reaction is done specifically from the secondary emotions.
Say that.
Yep, you're operating from emotions only.
Yeah. I'm gonna think about that completely different now.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you taught me that.
Yeah. Oh, your mama taught me that.
Oh, well, you know, now you're teaching me.
But responding actually takes thought. You know, responding, being able to respond, it means that you took the steps that I mentioned above. It took the steps that you took the time to breathe. Yeah, you took the time to get you some water. You took the time to remove yourself from the situation if it's getting heated. You know, you took the time to reflect on yourself.
Right.
You know, you looked inwardly. You identified the root cause of your feelings, and then now you're able to address what's pissing you off.
Right.
And you're able to do that, right?
Which is okay. This is another pause moment. We got to pause here because I think again, when you're listening to self-help books or you're listening to self-help podcasts, whatever it is that I think it's important to remember that no one is perfect. You know, there's going to be situations where you know, you're going to have to come back to it. You know, there may be something that you respond to, react to. So it's just important to give yourself grace and just continue to plow forward. You know.
Yeah. And you know, just going back to the don't react and don't respond. You know, a wise man once said nothing at all. That's something that I need to practice a lot. That's some type of philosophy. I think it's an ancient Asian secret or something. You know, but I think in one of my books that I read,
that's powerful.
Something that I read. A wise man once said nothing at all.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep. And until you're ready to address what's making you angry, like really and truly ready, is probably best to keep silent, you know, until you're able to actually walk through the steps that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
You know, it's probably best just to not say nothing. And, you know, I'm going to say as a Virgo, that is so hard for me to do. I'm like, I have something to say, baby.
Yes.
But, you know, it's, you know, being quiet is just one of the ways to help to, you know, mitigate those secondary responses. You know, until you're actually ready to talk about it, until you actually perform those steps, it's probably best not to say anything at all. You know, because, you know, again, the energy that is behind that secondary emotion is so powerful. Yeah. You know, it's something physical. You know, it's a force to be reckoned with. And you know, that force and that physical, that power can be used elsewhere. So instead of going back and forth, right, and arguing and yelling and fighting, use that powerful energy into something. Turn it into something useful. Like use it to go work out. You know, use that
that's a really good one.
Yeah, to go work out and burn off some steam. You know, you can go take a walk. You know,
which those things have been clinically linked to helping to deal with, I wouldn't necessarily say resolve, depression, right? You know, some of those the anxieties and you know, just the physical exertion, it releases some chemical that helps with those things in particular. So, and I think in you know, it's a way to control. It's a positive way to control the direction that you're going in, right? Like you literally can physically move in a direct, just move, right? It sometimes can help the mind flow in the same way, because a lot of times it gets stuck in a rut, you know, and so sometimes
thinking.
The movement of your body can definitely help with that for sure. And you can think while you're walking and running at the same time,
you
right?
can
So
perform all those
very
steps that we talked about earlier.
Get you out the house, right? Because a lot of times no one wants to go run with you, right? No one wants to go walk with you. You want some alone time? Go for a run. Go for a walk.
Right. Another thing that you could transfer that power into is your spirituality. You know, you have, again, this emotion that you're feeling, this secondary emotion is powerful. It manifests things. You know, life and death is in the power of the tongue. You know, so just making sure that we're placing it in a conducive place is ideal. Yeah. So if not physical, you know, you definitely can place that energy into something spiritual. And what I mean by that, I actually journal a lot. Yeah. So that's a spiritual thing for me that I use when I, you know, feel a certain way. Also, I listen to spiritual podcasts. I listen to Reverend Renee. I go to groups, Reverend Renee's groups. I listen to church. You know, anything that's spiritual, you know, that's something that you can place that power on. If you're not religious or spiritual, meditation is a good form, or even a good way to help. You know, that's a good place to put your anger. Meditation. Just sit there, quiet, forget about space, forget about time, and just be. Right.
And it doesn't have to be specific to religious practices, right? It could be tarot cards. It could be stones. It could be any of those things, right? We have to really open our minds and consider all things, right? Because there's so much that we don't understand and so much that we need to know, right? And we cannot, we can't block people from achieving the higher greatness because
it doesn't
we may
fit
not
the
agree
status
with
quo.
Yeah, like that's however you get there should be however you get there, you know?
Right. Or doing something creative. Okay, that's the last point. The last point where you could place that anger is finding something creative to do. Do you paint? Do you write poetry? Yeah. Like you, Gedido, you're an author. Are you writing? You know, are you creating something beautiful? You know, you could take that experience, write it down, and turn it into this great story with awesome characters. So those are places and things that you could do those are things that you could do. Excuse me, I had a little bit too much wine.
It's all right. It's getting late. It's a little late. Well, no, I mean it's only
We're
7.
almost done, y'all.
We old, girl. So
we old.
Late to us.
Old plus wine equals forgetting how to talk.
Well, that's all right. I think you're doing pretty good, honey.
So you know, the 3 places that you could put this anger is doing something physical, doing something spiritual, or doing something creative.
I think those are great things, honey.
So
and very tangible things, right? That's very tangible. I don't have to save a bunch of money for Geico, right? Like you don't have to do anything. Those are very tangible things that I can do right away. I don't have to plan. I don't have to wait for her to see a doctor. Yep. I can do them right now. You know. Yeah.
Well, that's it, y'all.
That's it, girl. That's man.
Yeah.
Wow. Another one down, huh? We be talking, girl.
Yeah.
You know. So 5 more episodes. Huh?
5 more. So y'all, if y'all can help us get to these, we committed to 10. So please put your suggestions in an email. You can comment on some of these platforms and let us know how we did. Again, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us in our virtual living room.
Absolutely. And lastly, I want to say, if you guys have not listened to any of our other podcasts, please go back and listen to them, y'all, because we got some good stuff on there. I think the last one we did was, I think I mentioned it earlier. Cheating on the Square, right? I think that's...
And we didn't stop doing episodes because of that episode, y'all. So I don't want to. I know how y'all are.
That. Yeah, right.
They'll be like,
something happened.
Lord, they do no more episodes.
No.
That's not why.
That's not why.
That's not why, y'all.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, y'all, thank you once again. Stay tuned because we'll be coming back with another one. Hopefully soon. It won't take 4 or 5 months for us to record them because I know it's people want the content, right? And
yeah.
they,
but life be life and child.
Life be life, and we still got to work. We still got to take care of kids and pay bills. So, but we do appreciate you guys, and we love you, and we will see you next time.
Yes. Bye, y'all.
See ya.